In today's show, CJ McCollum returns to Portland for the first time. Talk about what we saw on the court and what I saw behind the scenes. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. In today's show, CJ McCollum back in Portland, his first trip to the Moda Center. What he described as an emotional and exhausting night. I want to talk about all about that when the Blazers lose to the Pelicans and CJ McCollum's return. We'll get into all of it. And then this game had some, and tonight's action on Wednesday evening in the NBA had some action, some implications for the Blazers' future, for draft picks, for the pursuit of better lottery odds. We'll get into all of that in today's show, but it's going to be CJ heavy. We're going to talk about how he played in the game, and I want to share some scenes that I saw from, I was lucky enough to be in the building, and some scenes I saw while I was lucky enough to be there. But before we do that, let's just start with what we do. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers lose this game 117-107. It was not a foregone conclusion. The Blazers have been walloped mostly over the last week. They've managed. I mean, they just lost an overtime game, but when they've played good teams, they've been mostly walloped. The Pelicans are maybe a good team, hard to say. Certainly better than OKC, who they Blazers found a way to lose to on Monday evening. But Portland was in this. They were up at the end of the first quarter, up 36-32. They hit 7 threes in the first quarter. They were there and ready to go, and they led by 3 at halftime. 54-51 at the break. Pelicans, came out ready to go in the third quarter, reclaimed the lead 85-82 heading into the fourth quarter. And this game was still competitive. With 6 minutes left, the Blazers were down 4. Reggie Perry, who made his debut for the Blazers, re-debut for the Blazers, signing a 10-day contract this morning. Big man Reggie Perry, who had previously played 2 games as a 10-day contract for the Blazers back in December. He hits a bucket with 6 minutes left. Blazers are down 4. It's like they might do this. They might spoil the return. But Brandon Ingram checks back in. Pelicans seize control of the lead late and win 117-107. CJ McCollum, and we'll talk all about his ovation and how he was greeted in the second segment, but he came out hot on the court. He played in his first 9 minutes on the court. CJ McCollum had 14 points, 6 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. Hit his first 5 shots, was balling. First time he got a touch, the Blazers double teamed him. Love that respect. Second time he got a touch, he canned a left wing 3. Third time he got a touch, he canned another left wing 3. It looks like this was going to be his night, and he did indeed score 19 in the first half. 14 in the first quarter, 19 in the first half. He finished with 25 though, quieted down the stretch. Brandon Ingram had 19, 6 boards and 6 assists. I don't think he played particularly well on offense shooting wise, but he did get to the line for 13 free throws, and I thought he was really good passing the ball late in this one. On the other side for the Blazers, Drew Eubanks led the way with 21 points and 9 rebounds. Drew Eubanks, just really soft touch with a right-handed hook. You give my man a righty hook, he's probably going to make it. 10 points, 10 assists for Brandon Williams. Reggie Perry, 15 and 6 boards off the bench in 17 minutes. 11 shots in 17 minutes. He was getting them up. Ben McLemore doing what he does, getting in there and shooting the ball a lot. Finished 3 of 10 from the floor, 3 of 10 from 3, 5 of 12 from the floor, 16 points for Ben McLemore. CJ 9. Greg Brown, the third, had 9. Hit 3 threes in the first quarter and didn't score after that. 3 threes in the first half and didn't score after that. Greg, who had missed the previous game with a corneal abrasion, he got poked in the eye and had a bad eye bruise, scratched on the cornea. He was wearing goggles, and Goggle Greggy, as they were calling him on Blazers social media, Goggle Greggy was making jumpers. I thought, Greg Brown is a different basketball player if he makes jump shots. And that was he was doing that at least early in this one. Today was also the debut of Didi Louzada, who came over in the CJ trade. He was formerly of the New Orleans Pelicans. The Blazers acquired him in that CJ McCollum swap. He came over. He was injured at the time. He's tore the meniscus in his left knee and had missed time, and he was recovering from recovering from that surgery and trying to get back into NBA shape. He had been doing more game stuff. I'd actually asked Chauncey about a week ago kind of what he was doing. He hadn't really returned to practice. The Blazers aren't having like full-on practices at this time of the year. Pretty much no NBA team practices. The Blazers are not unique. So all of DD's stuff was just one-on-one, kind of like getting his body ready to play. And he finished with 5 points and 2 boards. He hit his first three, and it was like, oh, if I didn't really know he could shoot 3-pointers. And then he missed his next 4, including one possession where he got 2 unguarded wide open looks from the right side and missed them. His 5th 3 that he missed, it was like rushed. He got the ball. It was late in the first half, and the ball hit him coming like sharp off a rebound, and he tried to race out to the 3-point line and put it up, and he shot it behind the side of the backboard. So throw that one out. That one absolutely, for our purposes, absolutely does not count for our purposes, but he finished with 2 of 6 from the floor, 1 of 5, 2 boards, 5 points, and blocked a shot. I don't think there was a big takeaway from DD in this game, to be quite honest. He was fine, but I don't think there was a big takeaway in this game. I want to see more of him. Like, at least it's another, he's under contract for next season, unless the Blazers trade him, which seems relatively unlikely, but pretty much unlikely unless he's included in a larger trade. Like, he's one of the few guys on this team who played tonight who's for sure going to be on the roster next year, along with Greg Brown and two-way contributor Brandon Williams. Another name I should mention that I didn't before we wrap up this fastest recap in the West, or this recap of this game, is Keldon Blevins hit 2 threes, finished with 6 points and 4 boards. I thought this was one of the better Keldon Blevins games that we've seen. And also, and this is for my Reddit folk, because I learned this nickname from you dear contributors on r/Rip City. A Blazers employee, and I'm not going to out them, but a Blazers employee informed me that they told Keldon today, they were talking to Keldon pregame, and said, do you know that your nickname is Blev God? And he had never heard the nickname Blev God, and he loved it. Keldon loves Blev God. So, if you are someone on the Rip City subreddit who calls Keldon Blevins Blev God, or you are just someone out in the world who refers to Keldon Blevins as Blev God, incredible nickname, and he approves. Blev God approves. I'm not sure we'll ever see Blev God after the season ends in a Blazers uniform again. So shout out to Big Nepo. Shout out to Blev God. He approves of the nickname. That's a fun one. Let's talk about CJ McCollum. He was back. He was really good in this game early, but he also mentioned that there was just like a emotional fatigue aspect of this game for sure. And I want to talk about that emotional fatigue aspect. I want to talk about that, sort of what it's like to come home and all those things, and some little scenes I saw from folks who return to the Moda Center, like Larry Nance Jr. and Tony Snell and all those things. That's what we'll do in the second segment. But before we get there, I want to tell you about NBA Top Shot. It's the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading card, part stock market, and part fantasy sports with a built-in loyalty program. NBA Top Shot has evolved trading cards and made it easier to buy, sell, and trade by removing the hassle of card grading, shoe boxes, and binders. They got 24/7 peer-to-peer marketplace, lets you scroll through all your favorite plays, all your favorite teams, and once you find your moment you've been looking for, you can buy it in a couple of clicks. You are purchasing a one-of-a-kind singular NBA highlight or NBA moment. And you might be asking, why would I buy something that I can watch on YouTube for free? Why would I buy a highlight? Well, here's why. Because it's not about watching a highlight. It's about having ownership in the stock market of the NBA's greatest moments. Owning an NBA Top Shot moments can get you access to unbuyable, once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For example, last year, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to the Phoenix for Game 5 of the NBA Finals just for having Phoenix Suns moments in their collections. The following week, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to New York for the NBA Draft, and these collectors got to have dinner with 4 future first-round picks the night before they were drafted. And they got to play basketball with New York Knicks forward Obi Toppin. I guess he wasn't a New York Knick at the time, but you get the point. No, he was. Toppin wasn't a rookie. They got to play with Obi Toppin. Get it in with a real NBA player. So if you sign up today for NBA Top Shot, the best way to get started is to get yourself a starter pack. You can pull a moment of an NBA superstar like LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Damian Lillard, or you can pull star rookies like Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, or even Goggles Greggy Goggles. That'll cost you $9. So head on over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com. That's lockedon.nbatopshot.com to start buying your collection today. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond, and that's our third segment, Branding, but we're still in the second one, so all right, we made it to the second segment. Listen, CJ McCollum was back, and he was back, and it was a big, big moment. The way that intros usually work for the away team in the Moda Center is that they keep the lights on. They say, starting at center from Lithuania, Jonas Valanciunas. Starting at forward, number 5 from Arkansas. Or Herb Jones, whatever. From Duke, Brandon Ingram, get the hell out of here. Well, Willie Green's the coach. Okay, Blazers, turn the lights off. Music comes on. Huge production. That is not what they did for CJ McCollum. And you knew they weren't going to do that. You knew it was going to be a big moment. It was a huge anticipatory moment. It was a bigger crowd than normal when he came out to warm up. He actually came out to warm up. Fans are let into the arena at about 5:30. That's when the doors open. He was finishing his warm-up at about 5:35. So there were not really fans watching him, but there was tons of media people down there. This was big for media folks. I've been to a lot of Blazer games this year where there are very few media people there, like 4. There were a lot tonight. This was a big game, and the buzz was palpable heading into the arena. There was a lot of anticipatory moments here. So they get to the starting lineups. They go through, Jonas Valanciunas, Brandon, but then there's this moment, and you realize CJ is going to be last, and they do the CJ announcement like they would have done if he plays for the Blazers. Number 3 from Lehigh, a 6'3" guard, CJ McCollum. Crowd standing ovation, goes nuts, super loud. As loud as you'll ever hear for an opposing player. I mean, for sure, Kobe and LeBron have gotten crazy loud cheers in that arena. Steph Curry gets crazy loud cheers in that arena. But it's always mixed because you hear like a roar from the opposing fans who are filling the arena, and then Blazer fans kind of respond, no, boo, get him out of here. There was none of that. This was, however many people were there, 17,000 strong. I'm sure the Blazers announced close to a sellout. There were a ton of people there. It was a big game. They went nuts for him. And then they let it linger. And linger. They let it breathe. That's what the word I wrote down in my notes was they really let it breathe. Closing in on 35, 45 seconds of just letting CJ have his moments. He put his hands together to signal, thanks. He acknowledged the crowd, waved to both sides of the arena. He smiled. His teammates kind of gave him space so he could have the moment. They were crowding around him. It was this special sort of acknowledgement of what he meant. And they let it go for closing in on a minute. I didn't time it exactly. Someone estimated 90 seconds. I do not believe it was that long. It felt like for friggin' ever. After the game, CJ said it felt like the national anthem when someone is hanging on those notes. And you're like, okay. And it sat there with him. And then CJ comes out and he scores, 14 in the first quarter, hits his first 5 shots, and he's red hot. But he mentioned when he went to the bench that he was just exhausted. He was drained. He was tired. This tired him out. Believably so. Like, not in any critical way. Like, yeah, he was tired. That was an exhausting thing that like, if you've ever returned anywhere, or even just gone back to see your family in a place, just the emotional output it takes to return to a spot where there are expectations put upon you and there are memories and there are all of these emotional connections. There is an emotional output that it takes, and I think that's kind of what we saw from for what CJ was kind of explaining was like he was just tired. It was a feeling of just being drained, of pouring it all out because this was a special moment. Pelicans coach describes it, Willie Green describes it as beautiful. He says a beautiful moment from fan and team and player, like from the sort of that connection for the Blazers organization, the fans, and CJ, and like all three of those, that trio sort of acknowledging what this meant for him to return. And CJ is something like one of the 15 best players in the history of the franchise, but he also just like. He's the 5th all-time leading scorer. He doesn't have maybe the accolades to jump into like, oh, he's one of the all-time greats, Mount Rushmore type, but he is a very important part. I think you could make an argument that he's top 10. I'm not making that argument, but regardless of like the rankings, that's not what this is about. he's incredibly important to the last decade of the franchise, and they let him have this special moment. When he first checked out, they fans gave him a nice ovation, and then when he came back in for his first sub back into the game, they gave him another standing up. People stood up again and acknowledged him, and he put both his hands up, kind of did one pump up for the crowd and said, "Let's go." And it was kind of it was that moment that when he came back in, that it was kind of like, yes, we're still doing this. It wasn't over. And I think that was sort of the theme of the night, that this wasn't over. This was going to be 48 minutes of fans showing love to him and him trying to show love back while at work. I think that's the sort of tricky part for him, while at work. I thought those were really special moments, but they certainly weren't the only ones. There was a moment in the second quarter when he was called for an offensive foul for using a forearm to kind of push off a little bit, and the ball went back to the Blazers, and the fans booed the call. And this was perfect synergy, because not only were the fans supporting their guy, they were there to see CJ and cheer on CJ and show their appreciation for CJ, which was really nice, but they also want, like, y'all are smart. Blazer fans are smart. They know that this team needs to lose, and it's absolutely the way forward. So a call that was, not going in the favor of the Pelicans was bad for them in multiple ways, and I thought that was a really funny, really special moment. But I want to take you to some moments behind the scenes. I was lucky enough to be in the arena. I'm fortunate enough to have to be able to go to these games, and I think what my sort of value here is, in many ways, is like I try to get you a little bit closer. So let me take you a little bit closer to maybe some things you didn't see. One, I was walking into the arena, and the way that way that family members walk in, there's like kind of a loading dock parking area, and then you walk in and you can go out to the court, you can go around to the other side of seating and go back to the locker room. But everyone kind of funnels in through this one large kind of loading area that's near the parking lot. And as I'm walking through there, I see CJ's wife, Elise, and Elise's mom, and they are showing a Blazers employee, a longtime Blazers employee, who I'm not going to name drop because you don't know who they are because they work behind the scenes. But if you want to know and you have my phone number, I'll tell you who it was. Text me. But a longtime Blazers employee, they're showing them baby pictures of CJ and Elise's son, and it's a reminder that it's not just like CJ was a part of this, but he was also here for almost 9 seasons. The people around the Blazers watched him and Elise grow from, early 20s to married to having a child to, a decade of growth, like through their entire 20s and into their, into CJ's 30th birthday. I'm not sure how old Elise is. I assume roughly the same age. But like they saw them grow up. These people are part of your life. It's, Elise was at a ton of games. Maybe not all 41 home games, but 34 of them, like a bunch. And these people, the people around the Blazers organization, you develop the close relationships with them. So to see her and her mom showing a Blazers employee pictures of the baby, it was a reminder that it's like, this is your life. These are humans. These are special moments and people that you care about, that when the weirdness of the NBA, you are traded and moved to another place, that you don't, it doesn't just end, that these relationships sort of have to suddenly and inorganically end in maybe a way that they otherwise wouldn't. CJ's wife still lives here. CJ mentioned that he hasn't fully transitioned to living in New Orleans. He's going to come back here at the beginning of the summer, spend a little time here in the summer, do some business stuff. They still got the house, and then eventually they'll transition to living full time in New Orleans. So, CJ's wife Elise and their son, they're here. They still live here. So in some ways, CJ was coming back home literally to sleep in his own bed. That's sort of the strangeness of it all. And after the game, he said, "Oh, am I ready to get on to the next city and continue playing basketball because this was so much." This was also a homecoming in weird ways for this was about CJ McCollum, but he wasn't like, he's the longest tenured guy here. And I do not mean to compare him to Larry Nance Jr. or Tony Snell. I don't mean to do that, but it is the weirdness of the NBA that guys return. And like when I was out in the court prior to the game, or sitting near the court prior to the game, and I see Larry Nance come up and say what's up to Blev God and give Coach Ed Nishikori, Eddie a hug, and like, walk by and see a couple other people who work for the Blazers behind the scenes and say hello to them and give them hugs and chop it up and spend time and have the sort of those moments to catch up. And it's like, oh yeah, other people used to play here as well. I saw Tony Snell talking in the back with a Blazers employee, just catching up because they're friends. It's like you develop a relationship and then you are shipped out. Snell didn't play in this game. Larry did play. Larry played a little bit. He's back from the knee injury and coming off the bench for the Pelicans. But I saw Tony Snell come back. I saw Josh Hart, who did not play in this game, is out for at least another week and likely for the rest of the season. He came out of the back wearing slides in a t-shirt, probably just getting a lift in the back or whatever it might be, and he made sure to go hang out with the Pelicans assistant coaches and say hello and pay his respects. There are little moments that this was a game that was about CJ, but seeing all those other guys catch up in the back, it's not uncommon for people to chat pregame. I'm not trying to paint it as such, but it was a reminder of sort of the strangeness of the NBA and the human element of the NBA, the emotional and human element of the NBA. That it's like, hey, I get to see my old friends, my old coworkers. I'm going to make sure I say hello and spend some time before work starts, checking in on folks. It's sort of in many ways familiar to all of us who have ever left a job and gone back to it or whatever it might be. This was what it was, and do you see those moments? There was another one I want to share before we transition to the third segment, is that I said this was like a big media event. And it's a big media event because it was, everybody's there. I'm not going to call out my colleagues who don't always show up at games, but some colleagues who don't show up at games were there. And during the national anthem, there's this buzz, right? Because everyone knows the introductions are about to come, and they're going to be all this hullabaloo, and everyone's getting their phone out to record the intro and record the ovation and say the word. Everyone's getting ready to type out the word ovation onto their Twitter device, and CJ is just kind of having this moment, right? He's listening to the national anthem be sung, and he's closing his eyes and have this moment. And there are 4 still cameras taking photos of him focusing during the national anthem, and a video camera pointed in his face. During the stretch of Blazers basketball where they've been tanking, there is nothing even remotely close to that. And here is CJ with 4 cameras in his face during the national anthem. I thought that was a great moment. And then when the national anthem ends, the Pelicans everyone kind of mills about afterwards, and people do their little. I dropped something in the middle of this record, but people do their little pregame routine, their moment, right? And CJ goes to the bench and he closes his eyes for a second and kind of collects his breath and has this moment of sort of peace. And I asked him about that after the game, and he's like, I meditate. And that was a moment to catch my breaths, take some deep breaths, meditate, and settle myself, because he knew what was coming. And it was the introduction and that moment and then the game and all those things. And he said he was already kind of feeling some of that exhaustion. He had been there for shoot around and done media. He spoke to the media this morning for about 12 and a half minutes. And then it's like you come back and you kind of got to do it all over again. He talked about the weirdness of just walking around the arena as an away team of so many times, hundreds and hundreds of times walking in and going down to his locker at the corner stall where he was posted up for most of the end of his career with the Blazers, and he had to go into the opposing locker room, and how just bizarre it all was, seeing all the same people and putting on a different jersey and all those things, running out the different tunnel because of where the locker rooms are located and all those things. But I think that moment is one that will stick with me, is that CJ taking that moment of peace, closing his eyes, having a quiet moment on the bench, and saying, okay, here we go. Because I was feeling that with him. I was really just trying to take notes and be really aware of that, of all of the little pregame stuff, so I could bring it to you. And then I said to myself, okay, here we go. And there we went. The Blazers lost. And it was good news, because the Blazers are supposed to lose games. So let's talk about the importance of this loss and look ahead to the Blazers, because they caught the Kings, y'all. And the Blazers things worked out for the house that Joe Cronin unbuilt on Wednesday evening. Let's talk all about that. But before we do, let me tell you about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action, whatever it may be. There's some big college basketball games this weekend. I won't mention them, but I know which shade of blue I will be rooting for on Saturday evening. And if you're into it, you can find props and odds and live betting on all of that action. If you don't want to bet on college hoops, you can also bet on the NBA's final games of the regular season, the NHL. You can bet on tennis tournaments. You can bet on soccer. You can bet on combat sports like boxing and MMA. You're going to find all the action you want all there at betonline.net. So don't wait. Go take advantage. Have some fun today. Like I said, more props, more odds, more lines on everything you ever could want. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richman. Still listen to Locked On Blazers. And this time, I got my branding right because we did make it indeed to the third segment. CJ McCollum came back and was exhausted because it was an emotional outpouring from the night before when he showed up in Portland. He said Nurk came over and visited him at his house the night before. They spent a little time with Nurk, and he said he chopped it up with pretty much everybody he played with. Spoke with Dame and Ant, and he mentioned all the assistant coaches and some of the Blazers. Todd Forcier, the Blazers strength coach, who's been here forever. CJ had his moments to say what's up to everyone, but importantly, I think he also won the basketball game, right? Like that was the whole thing. And he mentioned that. Let's get some wins. Let's keep it going. But this win was important for the Blazers because they need to continue to lose. And it was also important for the Blazers because the Sacramento Kings won the basketball game. The Kings played the Rockets tonight, and the Rockets suddenly red hot, winning games down the stretch. They're looking much better, and they are maybe not as aggressively tanking as teams like Sacramento, Portland, and Indiana, who are saying, let's go for it and try to get one of these lower picks. But because of the Blazers' loss and the Kings' win, the Blazers move a half game behind the Kings in the standings, ahead in the tanking standings, but behind the Kings in the standings. Well, they're one back in the win column. For those of you who are telling me, Mike, they can catch the Kings, and I said, I don't know. It's hard to catch the Kings. At the time, it was 3.5 games over the final 12 when we first started talking about this, and I said, I don't know. But it was really this weekend. I did not think the Blazers were going to find a way to lose both to Houston and OKC. I thought they were going to split those. I thought they might win. I thought they might even win 2 out of 3. They damn near won that OKC game. They found ways to lose to Houston, and now they lose tonight to the New Orleans Pelicans, and they find themselves with the 6th worst record in the NBA. And if they lose out, which, like I said, very reasonable, if the Blazers lose the rest of their remaining games, they're going to be the proud owners of the 6th worst record in the NBA, which means they'll have a 37.2% chance of landing a top 4 pick. That significantly increases their odds. That's significantly better. It's about 5% better than if they had the 7th worst record. They jumped up a tier. That is huge to finish ahead of the Kings. It is a big deal odds-wise. It might not mean anything. They might just end up with a 6th pick, whatever. But it gives them significantly improved odds of jumping into the top 4. Jumping into the top 4 gives them a lot more options. They can just draft a really good player. Great, done and done. But then it's also, if the right trade comes up, having one of the first 4 picks in this draft, where there seem to be 4 clearly very good players, Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., Paolo Banchero, and Jaden Ivey. There seems to be a tier below. Once you get below those 4 players, at least from what I'm understanding from draft evaluators, if you get a top 4 pick, you're going to be in a good spot. And the Blazers will have a 9% chance at the top overall pick. These odds courtesy of Tankathon.com. This was a good day for the house that Joe Cronin unbuilt. That is a stupid branding from me. The other stupid branding I'm going to put TM to real quick is Hi to Jose, which is what I am calling when Jose Alvarado, Pelicans backup point guard, hides in the corner and then runs to make backcourt steals. He had 3 backcourt steals in the first half against the Blazers. Jose Alvarado, Pelicans backup point guard. I'm calling that Hi to Jose. I used that in a press conference. TM. I'm also putting it on wax here just for y'all. Other sort of news in the tanking world today. The Blazers moving behind the Kings into 6. Great news. This weekend, those games against Houston, OKC, and now the Pelicans. They've lost 5 in a row, but that 4-game stretch, crucial, just crucial. Elite, high level, wonderful tanking. Great stuff. The San Antonio Spurs, damn near won this basketball game. And if they had won this basketball game, they would have only been a game and a half back of the Pelicans, tied with the Lakers. But the Spurs, playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who are so damn good, came all the way back from a big deficit, had the ball in the closing seconds, and have a sidelines out of bounds play down one. They run a beautiful play. Keldon Johnson slips a screen, gets to the rim. The ball finds him in the middle of the paint. He just glides in and misses a layup at the buzzer that would have won it for the Spurs. Now, I don't know if it's better for the Spurs or the Lakers to get the 10th seed and for the Pelicans to have to play them, but I know this right now. With the Pelicans win tonight and with the Clippers win last night over the Utah Jazz and the return of Paul George, the Clippers are going to finish ahead. They're going to finish in 8th ahead of New Orleans, and New Orleans is going to finish in 9th ahead of either LA or San Antonio. The New Orleans Pelicans are going to very likely, almost certainly, they're a game and a half up on the Lakers and 2 games up on the Spurs because of the Spurs loss tonight. I just think that the Pelicans, they still play the Lakers one more time, so anything could change when that happens. But I think based on the Pelicans, who now own the season series over LA by virtue of beating them on Sunday evening, they're going to finish 9th. That's not set in stone. Obviously, I can do the math. There's like 5 and 6 games left in the regular season, depending on which team you're talking about. So like any 1.5 is not a meaningful number with 6 games left in the season, but I'm just going to call it now. I think the Pelicans are going to finish 9th, and I think they're going to be talking about hosting either the Lakers or the Spurs. I'm not sure who it's better. You'd think that a 1-game playoff with LeBron James is always going to be more important, and I kind of lean that way, have it be LeBron, but the Lakers are so unserious and just crappy that I kind of just am over it. Give me the Spurs and their sort of brand of high effort basketball and come what may. The Pelicans didn't look particularly compelling today. There's been some whispers that Zion Williamson could come back, but I do not believe those whispers. I think it is from reporting from Andrew Lopez of ESPN and a couple others. It seems extremely unlikely that Zion will come back. And if they don't come back, you're talking about winning a game against either San Antonio or LA and then going on the road to either the Clippers or the Minnesota Timberwolves and having to win one more game to make the playoffs. 2 wins for the Blazers or for the Pelicans in the play-in. The Blazers are owed a protected pick from New Orleans, is why that matters. But then the Blazers, their own pick, looks like it's going to be 6 if they can complete the business and lose all of their remaining games. That's your Tank Watch. That's your show. Tell your friends about the show. Tomorrow's show, we're going to wrap up the week having a little bit of fun and play the rest of my conversation with an interview I did earlier this week with Mark Schindler. We're talking all about Blazers draft prospects. Mark is someone who pays a ton of attention in sort of the NBA draft world. And if you missed my earlier interview with Mark, it's yesterday's show. It's in your feed. Make sure you check that one out. But you will not want to miss that one because Mark has great insight into some guys who could help the Blazers, who are in sort of that middle lottery tier, who he thinks can be early contributors to the Blazers. So come back, check that one 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Just search Locked On Blazers. You'll find us right there waiting for you. It's also on YouTube. That's it. Tell your friends. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.